was a debate in Maharashtra, particularly whether Phule-Ambedkar were philosophers. The Marxist scholar called Phule-Ambedkar has categorically said that Phule-Ambedkar could not be called as philosophers because philosophy talks about universal and Phule and Ambedkar were talking about particular, and that particular is about caste. The caste is the issue of Indians. It's not universal. Therefore, it cannot be called as philosophy. They cannot be called as philosophers. Interestingly, there was debate where Comrade Sharad Patil took a stance and theorized that Phule and Ambedkar both were philosophers. Later on, Comrade Sharad Patil also had certain kind of inhibition and certain kind of, you can say, criticism, and they declared that Phule-Ambedkar are not philosophers, and he proclaimed his philosophy called as something like Marxism, that is a later part. So what is the definition of philosophy? Broadly, in philosophy, there are two terms which are always spoken. One is epistemology. That is what is knowledge. So whether Phule and Ambedkar were talking about, discussing about the epistemic aspect of philosophy, whether they have discussed about knowledge, premises of knowledge, one. The second is about ontology. The philosophy talks about ontology. Ontological categories, like you know, ontology particularly of Advaita Siddhanta, Brahman, Atman are one and same. So this is an ontological statement, ontological position. This is ontology and epistemology. These are two grounds on which philosophies are defined. Leave aside many other definitions offered by Gramsci and others. We will stick to one definition, that whether Phule and Ambedkar were talking about the epistemology and ontology. I will take two very important kind of Ambedkar's passage from 5th volume. Some of you might have seen Ambedkar's writing and speeches. In writing and speeches, there is a small passage, warning to untouchables. There is a passage, warning to untouchables. And this warning to untouchables has an argument. Argument about the annihilation of caste, argument about the decimation of untouchability, and Ambedkar was warning to untouchables, saying that there is a tenet that untouchability and caste will go if there will be capitalism, if there will be development of capitalism. With development of capitalism, the caste will go. This is one kind of, we can say, argument. There is second argument, and this second argument came from Kantian kind of position of enlightenment. There is a certain kind of position that if at all reason will prevail, if there is a certain kind of spread of reason, it will somehow decimate caste. This is a certain kind of proposition was there. Ambedkar was engaging with these two important kind of statements. Ambedkar said that there is no possibility that as capitalism will grow, industries will grow, caste will go. There is no kind of certainty it won't go. And second important thing, that he said the spread of reason would not demolish caste. Majority of you might have been shocked. How come Ambedkar was saying against reason? Reason is always espoused. Ambedkar was saying that although this spread of reason would not decimate caste. Why Ambedkar was saying? Ambedkar cited the reason of Brahmins. The example of Brahmins. Ambedkar cited example of Brahmins. He said that Brahmins are most learned. Brahmins have acquired the logic of reason. However, Brahmins are not ready to demolish untouchability. Why they are not demolishing untouchability, although their reason tells them that untouchability is untrue. Untouchability is not right. If they, through their reason, could understand why they are not practicing it. And Ambedkar has said, because of their interests. Now, you know, in Marxism, we talk about the language of interest, class interest. The language of class interest. And here you can understand. In India, when you think about your interest, you have a certain kind of position of selfhood. A mother would think about her interest in terms of benefits given to children. She would be showering some kind of benefits for their children, and her interest would be the interest of children. So she will somehow conceive her interest as being mother. So there is a position of selfhood. So these selfhoods, all these selfhoods are structured through a corpus of knowledge. And this corpus of knowledge is knowledge created by tradition, which you all understand as Brahmanism. So our all interests, you will be defining your interest in terms of caste, but who has given you the identity of caste? And you will understand this is a certain kind of structure within which you are subjectivized. And because you are subjectivized, you think in terms of interest as gender positions, as being daughter, as being mother, as being wife, as being belong to some caste, as being belong to certain kind of, we can say, class. So all these kind of, we can say, interests are accrued through the structures of identity, and these identities are structured around the corpus of knowledge produced by Brahmanism. So one has to understand why there is principal contradiction with Brahmanism. Why Ambedkar was targeting Brahmanism. Brahmanism is the kind of corpus of knowledge which institutes several kinds of selfhood, and that selfhood in certain sense arrives to your interests. So one thing. So if at all you can understand this, and we can connect to Mahatma Phule. Mahatma Phule has talked about power knowledge much before Foucault. You might be knowing G.P. Deshpande first pointed out this. G.P. Deshpande has, can say, translated Mahatma Phule's writings, and there he has made this statement. But he has not explained what was the notion of Mahatma Phule. What kind of knowledge Mahatma Phule has in certain sense defined. What is Mahatma Phule's understanding? What is Mahatma Phule's theorization of knowledge? Interestingly, you will find, if you read Mahatma Phule's complete writing, you will find Mahatma Phule is talking about three kinds of knowledge. One kind of knowledge is knowledge of self. That is obvious. That how come you understand to behave in certain situations. For example, you all are sitting in front of me. I am sitting on the chair. I am speaking to you, our positions are structured through identities. I am a teacher, you are a student. Who has given us these identities of being student and being teacher? These are historically generated, traditionally arrived identities. So therefore, if at all I am not capable to teach you, you will respect me, because there is a tradition that teacher should be respected. So this is a certain kind of way your subject are structured. Being student should respect to teacher. This is being understood basically because this is subject formation, and these subject formations largely happens through the corpus of knowledge, that is Brahmanism. Phule defined it historical knowledge. This is one aspect of knowledge, and you will find all kinds of identities are nothing but historical knowledge. Take example of what is mother, what is father, gendered identities, caste identities. For example, if I am talking about Maharashtra, the idea of Maharashtra, you will amazed to know, idea of Maharashtra has a certain kind of historical identity, and it is structured on the very idea of the other. And who is the other? And who is the Maharashtrian? The self and other. These ideas have a certain kind of connotation of caste. If you read the literature in Maratha period, and you will find the people not belong to Maharashtra are seen as the other. And who are the others? They are Mughals. Those who have polluted, the definition is those who have polluted the Maharashtrians are the others. And you will find Batane, that is Marathi word, which is used particularly when menstruing woman is there. For menstruing woman, the pollution is there. For Dalit, there is pollution is there. So the idea of Maharashtra as region is configured around caste, gender, premise. You will find that these identities, oblivious of all of us, are ruling within us. Because any identity and any kind of, we can say, position you take, that positions happen to have a certain kind of historical kind of corpus of knowledge within which you are in certain sense acting, behaving, or in certain sense subjectivized. The second kind of, we can say, terrain of knowledge which Phule defines is the terrain which he understands as empirical knowledge. According to him, whole kind of, we can say, progress the mankind has achieved through this empirical knowledge. For example, I am speaking through microphone. You are listening to me. There is mobile which is capturing my whole speech, and now it will be telecasted on YouTube or any other, you can say, platform. And you will be finding that these kinds of things have been produced through empirical knowledges, cooking, car, any kind of stuff which mankind has evolved, it is through empirical knowledge. Phule says that the Brahminical notion of knowledge differentiate between the physical kind of act and mental act. Phule says that there is no differentiation between the labor and the brain. Labor is carried out by brain. So those who are somehow laboring classes, they also are using brains, and those who are the white collar job, they also are using brains. So there is no, in certain sense, separation between labor and brain. So interestingly, Phule gives a kind of comprehensive notions of empirical knowledge. And third notion of knowledge which Phule propounds is the knowledges about relationship, ethical knowledges or moral knowledges. And you know that moral knowledges are given through laws. There is a system of law. There is certain kind of, you can say, religious morality. There are certain kind of, you can say, practices, the moral kinds of practices given to you by everyday kind of ways. So all such kinds of, you can say, moral knowledges constitute as the relationship between man and man. That is the third domain of knowledge. Phule's kind of argument was that these all three knowledges are broadly governed by Brahmanism, and you have to come out of these clutches. So you have to search for your own past, and if at all you can search your past, you can earn your identities as you are. If you can go to past, if you can somehow strive in empirical knowledges, if you can say furnish your own kind of moral knowledges. Phule argued that if you want to furnish your moral knowledges, the criteria would be Atma Parikshan, self-introspection. If anybody humiliates me, if I am humiliated, I feel bad. I am in pain. If I am pained by the act of others, then I should not pain others. That is the criteria of Atma Parikshan. So the morality should be evolved around the criteria of Atma Parikshan. So anyway, if anybody in certain sense give me warmth, give me love, if I likes that, I also should give love to others. This is a certain kind of way through which Atma Parikshan can be category on which the moral knowledges can be furnished. That is the position of Mahatma Phule. So what Mahatma Phule was doing? Mahatma Phule was in certain sense talking about epistemology, knowledges. The way knowledge can be derived. This is the kind of position which Phule takes. One. Secondly, you have to understand that what Phule gives to us, Phule at that time has carried out a very strong kind of criticism of the term called avidya. Many times Phule is misinterpreted that Phule was influenced by missionaries. And because Phule was influenced by missionaries, all his writings were nothing but the influences of missionaries. You are not aware the way Mahatma Phule engaged with Indian philosophy. You might have heard about Mahatma Phule's Akhanda, Mahatma Phule's poetry, where he says that all devastation of Shudra, Ati-Shudra and women are carried by the avidya. Those who have from Maharashtra, they know the Vidyavina Matigili, the verse. Those who are not, they also know that all devastation of Shudra, Ati-Shudra, downtrodden caste, was carried out by avidya. This is his statement. Now what is avidya? One has to understand avidya. It is a very important epistemological device used by Indian philosophy. In Indian philosophy, you know that in Advaita Parampara, in the Vedantic Parampara, the avidya is what? Avidya is Maya. Brahma and Atman is one unity, is united. Brahma is the Atman, Atman is the Brahma. And because of the Maya, you cannot have the knowledge that Atma is the Brahma. So, what is avidya? Avidya is the byproduct of Maya. Avidya is the hurdle between knowing the Atman is Brahman. That is one understanding of Hinduism. The second understanding is offered by Buddhism. What is Buddhism says it is efficient cause of suffering. It is efficient cause of sorrow. And you will find there is a certain kind of similarity in the, if you take the Buddha's verses and if you take Mahatma Phule's verse, Vidyavina Mati Gili, you will find a very surprising similarity. The logic and the kind of form is very similar. What exactly Buddha is saying? Buddha, in certain sense, defines avidya as efficient cause for sorrow. Buddha understands avidya as the wrong conception of self and the world. Means anybody who is having the wrong conception of self and the world is avidya. Particularly this avidya is the source of slavery. This particular kind of avidya, Phule argues, is the cause of the Shudrati Shudra slavery. How it is cause of slavery? I will cite example of Phule's drama. Phule has written Triti Ratna, a drama. You might be knowing about his text, Triti Ratna. In Triti Ratna, that is third eye, where there is a story of a protagonist, a peasant woman. A Brahmin comes to his home for alms, dakshina, and she says, you are having physical power, you can labor, you can earn your own kind of livelihood. Why are you coming to my house? We all are oppressed basically because of the situations, and we don't have surplus to give to you. So you better labor yourselves and earn your livelihood. This Brahmin, although is very angry, doesn't show his anger. But he could understand that she is pregnant. You can understand anybody, woman is pregnant, it can be visible by her body only. So he understands that the woman is pregnant, and he says that I know the future of your child. She said she wants to know what is the future of my child. And then he says that your birth of your child will be detrimental to the life of your husband. The coming son, the birth of your son would be causing the death to your husband. That is the forecast. When the forecast comes, the woman who was belligerent, the woman who was self-conscious, the woman who was free, that self-independent women become enslaved by the idea, because she has, being women, being mother, responsibility to the cause of child. She wants that child should have a good future. Also she wants that the welfare of her husband. So in both ways, she now in certain sense submits to the dominance of Brahmin and asks the Brahmin, what is the way out? And she gradually crept into slavery through this mechanism of Jyotish Vidya, Jnana. The Jyotish Vidya is the trope which is used by the Brahmin to enslave the peasant women. Interestingly, Phule defines this slavery in an allegorical sense, that it is the serpent coil. As serpent in certain sense, when takes the coil around the man or around the woman, you are immobile. You can't have your own fight for your own freedom. You can't just have freedom. So this is a certain kind of this oppressive coil of serpent, slavery, and this is basically because of avidya. Interestingly, you have to understand this term avidya in the writing of Ramdas. Ramdas was the 16th century saint of Maharashtra who has defined avidya and vidya. He proclaims that vidya and avidya both are the forms of the goddess Sharda. Both are the facets of offshoots of Sharda, the goddess Sharda. And what is vidya? Vidya is anything about the metaphysical emancipation. And avidya is everything which is material. The metaphysical emancipation is vidya, and the material kind of desires, material kind of, we can say mukti, material kind of emancipation is seen as avidya by Ramdas. And you will understand that the way Phule in certain sense finds vidya, for vidya, Phule takes out three logics. He said there are three logics which are useful for furnishing knowledge. One logic which takes you to knowledge is the logic that we all understand as pratyaksha, where there is relationship between cause and creator, if the cause and effect, the man and his creation, the animal and his act. So you know actor and act by their association. You know cause and effect by their association. So this is a pratyaksha kind of way through which you furnish logic. That is the logic of pratyaksha. And the other kind of logic is a logic of inference. Phule gives the example of how sheep is drowned. Sheep is drowned basically because of wind. But nobody could nobody could watch the wind, and so it is by inference you derive that sheep is drowned by the wind. So this is a kind of inference. And third important kind of logic which he, we can say, put forth is the logic which is created by wavering shapes of imagination. In Marathi he writes Kalpaneche Taranga, Kalpanenche Ananta Taranga. What is this? What is this wavering shape of imagination? He gives example from Gita, Bhagavad Gita. There is a commentary of Bhagavad Gita in Marathi written by Jnaneshwar. He takes the example of 12th Adhyaya, 12th chapter of Gita. And there he gives an example, and that example is interesting. There is wavering shape of imagination. The example which he has given was of Atman, the idea of Atman. He says this is product of your imagination. This imaginative category called Atman. What he says, what his argument? Have you seen Atman without body? You can't see any kind of way that Atman without body. Body and Atman could be together, one. So, Atman is the category which is conceived, imagined, and this imagined category is used in terms of karma. You have committed sins, and because your Atma has committed sins, Atma is eternal, body is perishable, and because the eternal Atma is committed some sins, it will take rebirth. Understood? So this is a certain kind of trajectory, and this is a logic, this is a practice of logic, and this belief, this habitus is such a way strong, so impactful, that the great strength of medieval period. Sokha Mela, you might be knowing about Sokha Mela, was a great saint, got a great brain. At that time, he challenged the idea of untouchability, vital, that is pollution. He said, if birth is the cause of pollution, then everybody is polluted. Then why only untouchables are seen as polluted? That is a very perfect argument against untouchability. He is offering this argument. This man is succumbed to the logic of Atman and has accepted his guilt. He is submitted as untouchable servility and untouchable subjectivity to the imaginary idea of Atman and said that because in last birth I might have committed the sin of abusing Krishna. मागच्या जन्मी कृष्णनिंदा घडली म्हणून महाराजन प्राप्ती. Because in last birth I have abused Krishna, I have made some kind of wrong statements about Krishna. Because of that I have been turned into the earth of Mahar, untouchable. So you can understand this whole logic of avidya. The avidya has a larger kind of notion which in certain senses operates to control the whole of population, Shudra, Ati Shudra. They themselves, Phule writes that they are so subjectivized, they are so enslaved in mentality that those who came to emancipate them, they will fight against them. They will fight against their emancipator. That is the whole kind of gravity of this slavery. The avidya is the cause of slavery. And interestingly, there is a material kind of exploitation which is explained by Mahatma Phule. And this material exploitation carried by the kind of the relationships within which our self-view, caste self-view are structured. If you take example of a peasant, Phule has given various examples, but we will take example of the relationship of peasant with Brahmin. The relationship of peasant with moneylender. Who is peasant? Peasant has to be Shudra. You have to understand that in our Varna caste society, peasant, the very laboring peasant, labor, physical labor, is only attached to, assigned to the Shudras. So this is the condition. So peasantry, therefore, Brahmins are asked not to work in fields. Shilpi means all kinds of, you can say, artisanry work. Then the agricultural work are denied to Brahmins to keep their high casteness. That is the Shastras. You can understand this. So the peasantry, particularly this peasantry, is been seen as the low caste in medieval period and even in. So they could be exploited through a relationship of, if you go to villages, the Brahmin are seen as Bapus, fathers. The moneylenders are always addressed as my bap, parents. The relationship between parent and the ward, the guardian and the ward. Relationship between Guru and Shishya. You know, you are subjectivized as being the students. Who are the students? Those students has to be subjectivized, has to be docile, has to be passive, and teacher has to be active. So I am speaking, you are listening. These are the role assigned by structure. So this is a way through which the relationship is generated. So the peasant is devoid of the knowledge of money, knowledge of accounts. So he is uneducated, he is illiterate. So there are a structure within which the peasantry is exploited. So he is credulous, religiously credulous. He doesn't have enough kind of knowledge about accounts. He is servile because the money lender is master. So all kinds of scheming, all kinds of, we can say, forgery can be carried out against peasantry, although peasantry would somehow suffer and would not talk against the guru, would not talk against the palak, parent, guardian. So this is a caste bondage. This is a caste relationship within which the economic exploitation is carried out. One has to understand the way economic exploitation is carried out, and you can understand that this is the basis. The caste relationship is basis for economic exploitation. If you take these ideas particularly, you will find that Phule further was trying to make a kind of important statement about the knowledge, that the experience is the ground of knowledge. It is important. You know that yes, particularly in 90s, 20s, empiricism become a kind of important kind of ground for knowledge. And we all, in certain sense, now espouse empiricism. Even sociology, political science, economics, all these social sciences are mostly empiricist. So empiricism prevailed. And now one has to understand that what is this whole kind of ways that this empiricism is producing knowledge. And there at that time, Phule has made interesting kind of position. You might be knowing that at Pune, there was a man called Dharmaraj. Dharmaraj asked Ranade to deliver a lecture about peasantry, and he made three statements. He said within these 30 years, the condition of peasantry is improved. He made second statement that castes are good. Caste could in certain sense progress and in certain sense reform, and therefore castes are good. Third statement he made that the Kulkarni, particularly Brahmin official in village, is helping peasantry. Phule has offered refuted this argument in his tract called Ishara, and it starts with Jis tan lage wahi tan jane, bija kya jane gawara. It's Kabira's Doha. Phule is invoking Kabira's Doha. The body which bears the pain only knows about the pain. No other could know about that pain. So if you are writing about untouchables without the experience of untouchable in it, Phule would not accept it as knowledge. So, particularly to understand, Phule gives us a kind of ground on the subjective knowledge of toiling subalterns, caste subaltern, general subaltern, could be in the arena of knowledge. So your subjective experiences could be turned into knowledge. You might have read Gopal Guru's work where he argues that knowledge is objective, knowledge is universal, and particularly experience is personal, experience is subjective. So personal experience, subjective experience cannot be knowledge. So how come it can be turned into knowledge? There is interesting kinds of things, interesting kind of structures which you will find in Phule's writings. I won't go into it because Professor Bhaviskar will be talking, but there I will talk 2-3 things. One, that is interrogation of our own experience. Interesting kind of mechanism which Phule shows, particularly in his writing called Vipcord, the Vipcord of peasantry. the farmers is God, where he has given two dialogues. One dialogue is now presently you know aware about the Maratha Arakshan. So Khasa Maratha Manavarayanshi, those who call themselves Maratha, dialogue with those who call themselves Maratha. This is one dialogue. And the other dialogue is about those who are Kabirpanthi Sadhu. We'll take the example of Kabirpanthi Sadhu. Kabirpanthi Sadhu comes to Mahatma Phule with anger that why Mahatma Phule is criticizing Vedas. Because this is our holy kind of book. Vedas are our sacred book, and why Mahatma Phule is attacking on Vedas. So he comes and poses the question to Mahatma Phule, why you are criticizing Vedas? Phule asked him question, have you read Vedas? He said, I have not read Vedas. He said, I have seen Vedas. He said, yes, I have seen Vedas. He said, where you have seen the Vedas? He said, I have seen Vedas in the home of Brahmins. In the house of Brahmins I have seen. He said, whether you have anyway touched the Vedas? He said, no, I have no authority to touch the Vedas. Neither you have read Vedas, neither you have touched Vedas. Then how come you know about Vedas? Then he says, Brahmin told me that they are the sacred books and they are the great books. They said, for whom Veda has written? He said the Vedas are written for mankind. Then he asked the questions, in which language Vedas are written? He says, Sanskrit. He said, how many people in the world knows about Sanskrit? He said, little. How many Brahmins know about Sanskrit? He says, a little. And then he argues, this whole kind of process of interrogation of your own experience could take you to a kind of, we can say, platform of knowledge. So these are the mechanisms which Phule has given to us. So broadly you will find that Phule had a certain kind of lineage of anti-caste tradition in India. And you will find interesting kind of, we can say, examples in his writing. You will find he is quoting the Lokayat tradition. If you take his writings, particularly of superstitions, he is mostly quoting, mostly dwelling his argument of the Lokayat tradition. There will be name of Brahaspati, there will be name of Charvak, and you will find in Phule's writing the exact kind of verses given by Brahaspati, given by Charvak, and he will criticize Vedas. For example, by criticizing Vedas, he has invoked Brahaspati. Char Vedasya Kartaro Dhurta Bhanda Nishachara. That is the verse written by the Brahaspati. He quotes it to fight against Veda. So this is a certain kind of tradition. You will find that whole superstitious faith and particularly priestcraft is criticized not only through missionary propaganda. It is the indigenous kind of tradition of Lokayat is invoked by Mahatma Phule to fight against the priestcraft and the superstition. Secondly, you have to understand the second aspect. Phule had a better kind of criticism of caste. For example, the missionaries had their own kind of limit of criticism of caste. You might be knowing about, particularly those who are from Maharashtra, might be knowing about Baba Padmanji. Baba Padmanji was the first convert from low caste, non-Brahmins. A learned non-Brahmin converted to Christianity was Baba Padmanji. Particularly in 1854, he converted to Christianity. He has written several books. What he says, that some kind of, we can say, Brahmin boys, young boys, were coming to him, coming to Baba Padmanji, to demolish caste. What is the act of demolition of caste? is to eat Samish, that is to eat non-veg. To eat non-veg, the Brahmin boys were coming to Christian missionary that they want to end caste, and to end caste, they will eat the non-veg. Baba Padmanja argues that this is not the way you should somehow demolish caste. You should demolish caste because God doesn't accept it. Means God is the central to Christian missionary, that because Christian God doesn't admit caste, therefore you have to reject caste. That is the limit of criticism of the Christianity. While you will find that Phule was criticizing caste in its roots, why Phule could criticize caste from its roots, basically because Phule had a strong lineage of anti-caste traditions. Phule was invoking, dwelling, developing the logic of Buddhism. You might be knowing about the text called Vajrasuchi. The text was written in 1st century BC. That text haunted the anti-caste revolution, that in shaped anti-caste revolution over the years. And you will find all sects, particularly take example of Warkari sect, take example of Mahanbhav sect, take example of Vairashaiva, take example of any kind of anti-caste kind of traditions, and you will find whenever they are criticizing caste, rejecting caste, they are invoking the very kind of argument of Vajrasuchi. And interestingly, we will find Phule invokes the argument of Vajrasuchi. Phule was in certain sense known to the Vajrasuchi basically of two ways. That one, in Maharashtra, the Vajrasuchi was translated by the disciple of Tukaram, that is Bahinabai. Bahinabai translated Vajrasuchi into Marathi. So the whole kind of logic of anti-caste logic of Vajrasuchi was available. Secondly, in Maharashtra particularly, there was the central province, you might be knowing about it. Nagpur comes to central province, and there was a Brahmin, Sihoji Bapu, working under Wilkinson. Wilkinson was the official at the central province. Wilkinson asked the Sihoji Bapu to translate the Vajrasuchi into Marathi, and he translated Vajrasuchi in Marathi. He was so angry because of the arguments offered by Vajrasuchi. He has, you can say, written a rejoinder, Tanku, and he has given that Tanku with the translation. That translation has given the first anti-caste kind of organization in Maharashtra. That was Paramahamsa Mandali. It was started in 1849. And the very act of Paramahamsa Mandali was to demolish caste. The whole purpose of Paramahamsa Mandali was demolish caste. I don't go into that kind of thing. And the man who was instrumental to organize this was Dado Pandurang. He has written a kind of text called Dharma Vivechan, the narrative of religion, and where the whole kind of purpose of that text is to demolish caste, and the argument is from Vajrasuchi. So you will find that there are several sources through which this argument came. Phule, in certain sense, developed anti-caste argument by two ways. Phule had a certain kind of, we can say, lineage with Indian kind of anti-caste tradition, as well as he was very well kind way connected to the lineage of radical lineage of French Revolution, which was in certain sense defended by Thomas Paine. The Thomas Paine was the guru of Mahatma Phule. Mahatma Phule has written a notification, and he has published that notification in the newspaper. And he said that I now had joined the camp of American philosopher. And who was that American philosopher? It was Thomas Paine. So you can understand that this Thomas Paine, you have to understand the whole kind of radicalism which was in certain sense there in European philosophical tradition. Burke was liberal and Thomas Paine was radical. Particularly both Thomas Paine has interpreted French Revolution, defended French Revolution, and Burke was very frightened by French Revolution. Was liberal. He wanted changes. He wanted democratic changes. However, the French Revolution was seen as threatening by Burke. So you will find, particularly in this kind of European tradition, the Burke is seen as orthodox, and Thomas Paine is seen as radical. And this radical kind of, we can say, tradition has several other thinkers, and all very empiricist thinkers. Phule was influenced by Thomas Paine basically because Thomas Paine is giving certain kind of premises of philosophers like Vico, Locke. They were empiricist philosophers. So we will find some kind of argument Phule was offering in 19th century Maharashtra came from directly from Vico and from Locke through Thomas Paine. So this is a certain kind of tradition within which you can situate Mahatma Phule. I think I have taken too much time, so it is not so much time left for Ambedkar. But I have, in certain sense, engaged with Ambedkar as philosopher, particularly the way Ambedkar has offered criticism of caste, where I think those who can read Marathi, there is a certain kind of philosophy of Ambedkar, particularly of self-respect. How Ambedkar's philosophy as self-respect aroused to the very idea of freedom. You have to understand Phule and Ambedkar both has defined particularly caste as slavery. Interesting. You have to understand particularly the spirit of enlightenment. The spirit of enlightenment is freedom. The enlightenment defined humanism in terms of freedom. So whatever is against freedom is not human. So slavery is inhuman. Slavery is in certain sense uncivilized. So slavery has to be demolished, and you will find that Thomas Paine was much more kind of supporter of abolition movement. All these Quaker movements in America were against kind of slavery. So this idea of slavery in certain sense was rejected by the Enlightenment kind of project. Phule and Ambedkar both in certain sense were influenced by this very Enlightenment kind of trajectory, and both defined caste in terms of slavery, and both in certain sense unfolded the whole kind of caste slavery, because their theorization of caste as slavery has given us an enormous kind of theoretical and philosophical kind of writings which we could somehow use to emancipate ourselves. I, in certain sense, will cease to speak, basically because Professor Bhaviskar also has to speak, and you also would somehow be having your dinner. So I stop here and thank you for being here, for listening to me. Thank you very much.